It is a solid foundation on which modern societies are built, the scepter of development. It is the differentiating factor between people and places in personal and collective social, economic, and cultural prosperity. The importance of education cannot be overemphasized, hence the reason why nations seek it and parents make sacrifices for their wards to get it. The conclusion is often celebrated in pomp and pageantry as graduation from higher institutions of learning. With time, however, we see graduation ceremonies at the lower level of education extending to toddlers. How does this benefit society? This trend, among other anomalies within the education system, form the focus of our discourse on this edition of the program. I am Ogochukwuka Ona, and this is Dateline 360. Welcome. We begin with Ometere Chiedu's inquisition into the rationale behind the elaborate celebrations and of the graduation ceremony at the nursery and primary level. She reports on the arguments for this trend, looking at academic aspiration, confidence building among young learners, and against as unnecessary extravagance, a burden to families, which takes attention away from the true essence of early education.
Primary school graduation is an opportunity for parents and guardians to come together to celebrate and award the students.
It fosters personal growth and it makes them to strive more.
It began as a simple rite of passage, a handshake, a certificate, a farewell to one stage of learning. But today, graduation at the basic school level has evolved into pageantry. Private schools in particular roll out the drums, decorate halls, and dress up children in gowns and caps, a scene that mirrors universities. For parents, the experience is often bittersweet. The joy of seeing their children parade in colorful robes is quickly tempered by the burden of bills, payment for outfits, reception, and even themed dress codes. Some confess they felt pressured to keep up appearances. Others admit their children hardly remember the occasions years after.
If every school wants to do graduation, it's not really a big deal. As long as they can afford, parents can afford it, why not?
Graduation should come from maybe primary 6.
It keeps memory, but at the same time, it's not something one should do with force.
Critics describe the ceremonies as unnecessary waste. They argue the millions spent could provide food, healthcare, or learning materials. To them, it is exploitation disguised as celebration, a distraction from genuine academics. Educationists say the focus should return to core learning, while extracurriculum activities, not costly graduations, should help build creativity and social skills.
You can't divorce that from the society because it is the way the society have gone. That is what the school owners have capitalized upon.
Losing focus to the extent of waiting for graduation ceremony is a misnomer in the society and should not be permitted.
The school fees now is even more expensive. Feeding of children now is even more expensive. Talk more of now doing the graduation for nursery.
At the center of the debate is a pressing question: who truly benefits? The children, dazzled by the glamour, the parents, drained by the expenses, or the schools, smiling to the bank? The answer may well determine whether these ceremonies remain a tradition or a trend that must be curbed.
Graduation ceremonies are becoming the new order of the day in Nigeria, once reserved for higher institutions. The trend has trickled down to toddlers and young pupils. While some hail it as motivation, others dismiss it as exploitation and needless extravagance. For Dateline 360, Ometere Chiedu.
Good questions, Ometere. Who benefits at the end of the day? Owing to this trend and other issues, which we will also examine, 5 states across the country recently took decisive steps through policy to ensure that proper protocols are observed in the interest of learners, and Ondo is among them. Ifeoluwa Omoshule has details.
Ondo State, just like its counterpart in Edo, Benue, Ebonyi and Imo states, recently placed a ban on elaborate graduation ceremonies as part of measures to reform the education sector. This ban comes with other policies such as restrictions on underage admission, unauthorized excursions and use of unapproved or foreign curricula. The State Commissioner for Education says the primary objective is to restructure the education subsector with a view to cutting costs and stimulating a more conducive learning environment.
A student in GSS 3, a GSS 3 student still has a long way to go to finish the secondary school level. And given the economic situation in the country, it is very, very reasonable to stop this.
Some parents and teachers, while commending the government for the new policy focus, are apprehensive on its enforcement.
The government's decision is generating reactions across the states.
It's a good thing if government can, but the problem has always been implementing such.
Asking the primary 6 boys or in the kindergarten or in nursery schools to be doing graduation, it's a waste of money for the parents.
Finding textbooks to the younger ones is also good, because with the economy in Nigeria, we have to embrace prudency.
Without the state monitoring team, people just believe it's one of the things that government can say.
The State Ministry of Education has, however, sounded a note of warning to schools to comply or face withdrawal of their licenses. Some of these policies, which also aim at ensuring discipline among students, is targeted at bringing back the lost glory in the education sector.
With schools built to resume the 2025-2026 academic session, a systematic implementation is advocated by stakeholders. From Akure, Ifeoluwa Omoshule reporting for DATELINE 360.
Next, Elias Itia reports from the Benue State perspective, looking at the factors that necessitated the directive as well as how enforcement could encourage educational development.
Benue, like many other states in Nigeria, including Kogi, Ebonyi, Imo, Ondo and Edo, recently pronounced executive orders authorizing the transfer of textbooks and other educational materials from older to younger learners, as well as placing a ban on compulsory extra lessons and hosting of graduation ceremonies for all basic education classes. It is in order to achieve this all-important directive that the Ministry of Education and Knowledge Management in the state is collaborating with relevant stakeholders in stepping down awareness. For them, the enforcement will be carried out by the Task Force Committee and the area education offices across the 23 local government areas of the state. Some parents describe the policy as a welcome development considering the present economic situation.
By the time you are allowed to give a younger one a textbook or a neighbor who your child has finished to give him, that is extending a hand of fellowship.
Children should transfer their textbook to the younger ones. And it's very, very important that the textbook should not terminate. If not, the use is not only for the immediate, it's for generational use. And I appreciate I like the policy, that one. But for the issue of the graduation party, that is government issue.
And so to me, I feel that the idea of government trying to wipe off the idea of all this other unlawful expenditures from the parents. If he is able to wipe it up, we parents will appreciate it.
For Agun Moses and other parents out there, the authorization for the transfer of textbooks from older children to their younger siblings is a welcome development, just like they applauded the ban on exploitative tendencies that have continued to heap financial burden on parents, describing the policy as one that indicates that the government is thinking about the plight of its citizens. For DATELINE 360, Elias, ETF.
When I was in secondary school, the completion was marked with send-forth gatherings and valedictory services for those raised with the Christian schools, all at the instance of the schools. As time is changing, so also is trends. These days, we hear of sign-out party and prom, so much that it has become a source of concern for parents and government alike. Let's hear views about this new form of farewell event from Kano.
For decades, secondary school graduation in Nigeria was marked with modest send-forth ceremonies and valedictory services, moments of reflection, admonition, and thanksgiving to prepare young graduates for the journey ahead. But today, that solemn tradition is gradually giving way to send-off parties, popularly called proms, nights of glamour, fashion, music, and in some cases, excesses that leaves parents and teachers concerned. Experts say Western concept of prom is meant to celebrate transition into adulthood. But does it translate the same way in Nigeria, where it's packed of cultural and moral debate?
As educationists and as Africans, we must be careful the kind of influence we allow into our settings. You know, we are copying a lot of things from the whites. They do this, so we also want to do it in this place. I, for one, don't encourage prom because I feel it's a culture that is alien to us here in Africa. It's a wrong mindset that we're setting for them because a lot of these children become very negative in the way they do things. They try to copy the Western world, and those will gradually erase our cultures that we have in this place.
The lights, the dresses, the music, what many call a once-in-a-lifetime experience has become a growing trend among urban schools. From underage drinking, late-night outings, and risky peer influences, to the pressure of affluence and competition in fashion, critics argue that prom culture creates unnecessary strain, both financially and socially, on students and their families.
We don't do prom because there's so many negative dimensions to prom. During prom, you see, no right-thinking school agrees for their children to have proms. Usually, these children go behind the school and behind their parents and organize these proms.
Beyond finances, morality tops parental worries. Unplanned after-parties outside school supervision have in some cases ended in regretful experiences that shadow young graduates long after the celebrations.
The aftermath of prom night is as deadly as the excitement students enjoy when they are experiencing the moment. Now, you talk about at that point in time, they find out days later or weeks later that you're pregnant. Other girls too tend to give out their prized possession.
Still, not all schools are succumbing to the pressure. Many continue to uphold structure sent for ceremonies within school premises, combining fun with discipline and guidance with moral instructions. But questions remain. Are there enough chaperones to monitor these events? And can they truly balance freedom with responsibility? As Nigeria's secondary schools grapple with cultural importation of prom nights, the debate continues. For many, the outright rejection of the modern trend is not the solution. The test lies in guiding the graduates to celebrate milestones with discipline, responsibility, and a deeper reflection on the essence of education. In Kano, Hadiza Muhammad Ali reporting for Dateline 360.
Still talking prom nights, Eugenia Ndubisi has more on this alien youthful fever and its implications when not properly guided.
Prom is a high school tradition popular in the USA and UK, where graduating college students gathered for a night of music, dancing and celebration, marking a milestone in the teenage years, signaling the transition towards adulthood. This has, however, gained entrance into secondary schools in Nigeria and Edo State in particular, where parents, despite the financial involvement, go all out for their children to be outstanding for the day, including renting of luxury cars to drop them for the social event. This gradually fades away the usual send-forth party and validatory services, where students were highly encouraged to study hard and remain focused as they transit to another phase of life. The concerns of some parents in the adoption of the prom in Nigerian secondary schools include indecent and inappropriate dressing of girls, which to a large extent promotes immorality and unhealthy competitions among young secondary school students.
Because I've witnessed a lot when parents are trying to do everything that they make sure that their children participate in this kind of activities.
The competition will be too high. Children are living a life that the life they are not supposed to live now. They are not yet that adults that they are supposed to. They are trying to, the competition is on the high side. For them, it's not a good one.
They have actually made graduation, over celebration, and it is not good for our kids. You can imagine when somebody who is graduating from JSS 3 or SS 3 will go and rent luxury cars.
To ensure proper coordination and safety of the pupils and students while the party lasts, the school usually appoints somebody known as a chaperone. How effective does the chaperone coordinate the students?
Considering their number and influences to avoid ugly incidences.
I don't think there's any school around that can employ enough chaperone to take care of children when graduation is going on, especially the level of children we are talking about.
Due to the continued public outcry in Edo State on the excesses of most private schools at the end of every academic session, the state government banned such activities in primary, nursery and secondary schools to help check the trend.
The effects will not start showing until June, where the end of third term comes, where that party is really going to show up, where June, July, where you have graduations. From that time, everything by then everything would have been in place to monitor schools that will fail to comply.
Respondents are unanimous in their views that secondary schools should return to the former school send-forth party and validatory services, which mostly dwelt on admonitions, sober reflections and appreciation to students with outstanding performances during the academic session.
Although prom is a beautiful social event, but the risk of it being abused by many young Nigerian school leavers is high. Hence the need to exercise caution and allow children to be children. In Benin, Eugenia and DBC.
I really hope we can go back to those days, send-off parties and validatory services laden with reflection, guidance and emotional farewells to prepare students for the next phase of their lives. And as schools across Nigeria reopen for a new academic year, parents not only grapple with tuition fees and uniforms, but also purchase of textbooks, a recurring cost that is pocket draining. This pressure is worsened by policies in many private schools that compel parents to buy new editions yearly, which limit the reuse of books by siblings or insist on school-specific materials. Christiana Akonde has been asking questions about this, and policy changes is being pushed to ease this burden and make education truly affordable.
As schools resume after the long vacation, parents in Imo, Benue, Anambra, Ondo, and Plateau State have reasons to feel some relief. These are the first states to enforce a ban on non-transferable textbooks, a policy that had for years compelled parents to buy new books every academic session. With this new policy, textbooks can once again be passed down to younger siblings or other students, reversing a practice that placed heavy financial strain on families. Yet, this relief is currently limited to only 5 states out of the 36 states and the FCT. For many Nigerians who went to school in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, carefully wrapping textbooks to preserve them for younger siblings was a familiar tradition. That culture began to fade when schools and publishers started introducing textbooks with in-book exercises, making it impossible to reuse them and adding unwarranted costs to parents.
This day now, in any school you register your children, the younger ones cannot use the other ones' books. So you end up buying books every section, and that book is not easy because sometimes the book and the school fees is almost measuring, and you see our husband, the load is really on them. So if government can help us.
Government provide food for us. The time of Obasanjo, UBE, we have food, textbooks, uniforms. Sometimes they pay us allowances to encourage us to school. Even poor people should have came. But now it's not like that. The textbook I was using in secondary school, the same school, 4 of my siblings follow. They use it.
At government schools, the situation is different. Textbooks are not bought every year, but are reviewed about every 4 years to align with the minimum academic standards.
We are supposed to use a textbook for 4 good years before we change it. And this will give the parents the opportunity that when a child enters this year, the following year, if another child of that parent is coming into JS1, you will be able to use the one that his brother or sister used when he or she was in JS1. That is, pass that textbook to him. That is why they are not refilling the book every year. It is every 4 years that the review of the textbook used in this school will be done. And the same thing that is being done to this public school is what they did at the they do to private school, because all of us are being invited for that book review. Then when we look at some of the textbook, especially in primary section, there are some that the students are supposed to write on, to do their assignment on. Space are there, they call it workbook. So if a student has used that workbook, another child cannot use it. But the only thing that we will appeal to the private school is that it should be only on workbook that they will emphasize on, not on the major text, because the major text is still the same thing and it's the same words that are inside it.
Education analysts point out that although parents can choose to withdraw their children from private schools, stronger regulation is urgently needed. They recommend government-approved and standardized book list, tighter monitoring of school owners and publishers, and fairer textbook policies to ease the financial burden on families.
I think governments, legislators can legislate, and I see that happening lately. Basically, I know that this affects private schools. I do not know how many government schools do the same, but government schools have their own issues too. But private school is a choice. If you cannot afford it, you go to a government school if the schools are there. So we're advocating that government builds more schools. If government does what they need to do, the needful, private schools will run out of business. Or they will be forced to do the right thing.
I've been a teacher in the classroom and involved in teaching and learning for 20 years now. I used to say when I go for teacher training that the difference between the public school and the private school is simply the availability of textbooks to the children in the private school. Now, when you go to a private school, you find a child in nursery 3 is already able to read. If you ask any teacher, to be honest to you, they will tell you it is the availability of textbooks. That same child's met who would be in a public school who has not had any access to textbooks, the likelihood they might not be able to read. So there is an advantage when we have these textbooks. But yes, I know with the harshness of the economy, we have to find ways of cushioning the effects for parents, and I think I will strongly recommend that we think through that line of action.
Analysts and parents agree that without a clear policy to regulate costs and transfer of textbooks, parents will continue to struggle in silence. Christiana Akode for Dateline 360.
And with that report by Christiana, we conclude this edition of Dateline 360. I am Ogochukwu Ona. God bless Nigeria.